Imagine you had 5 minutes with anybody in the world, present or past history, that you could spend time with, and you could ask them anything you wanted. Would you know what to ask? This is Tad Fulford with Rise Up in Real Estate, and today I'm going to tell you what I would ask if I had a few minutes with anybody that I could choose out of past or present history. What if I could sit down with Martin Luther King? What if I could sit down with Oprah or Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Jesus or Gandhi or Mother Teresa? What if I could sit down for just a few minutes and ask these people some questions? But even more practically, what if you could sit down for 5 minutes? Or what if you could pick up the phone and give a phone call to somebody in your marketplace, in your profession, in your personal or professional world that you feel like is elite? What if you would take the chance, the risk, and pick up the phone and ask them some questions? What would you ask? I'm going to give you a few that I ask. And I've been doing a podcast called Rise Up in Real Estate for some time now. And on my podcast, I ask these questions of every single guest with a few sprinkled in, and I want to pass them along to you. The first thing I like to ask everybody, and I would ask these people, is number one, what do you see coming in the future? I would ask them what I call the crystal ball question. What's coming next from your perspective? I always say I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm not going to ask you to get this 100% right. But from where you sit with your influence, your everyday activities, what do you see coming in the future? I respect your opinion and I'd love to hear it. So that's the first question I always ask is what is your crystal ball? The second question I like to ask, and this is a big one, people hate to answer it, but can you imagine asking some of those people that I mentioned in the beginning of this video this question? Number two is, what is your superpower? If there was only one thing that you could do in this world, what would it be? Only one. Now, Jesus might be an obvious answer, but when you think of asking someone elite in your marketplace, what's their superpower? Figure out if they've got it dialed in. If they found out their, what I call true purpose. Do they know what they're here for? That's a question I always like to ask. Third question I love to ask, and I get some great answers on this one, is tell me what is your secret ingredient to personal success? If you could tell me one thing in your personal life, a secret ingredient in your personal life that really gives you great success, what would it be personally? And along with that, the fourth question I ask is, what is your secret ingredient for professional success? Now, sometimes when you put people on the spot with these questions, they don't know the answer. But if you give them a little time ahead, like if you send someone an email and say, hey, I would love to chat on the phone and talk about these 4 or 5 things. I really respect your opinion. I'd love to have them from you. But here are the questions. They have a little bit of time to prepare, a little bit of time to ponder, because not a lot of people think about what's their superpower. Not a lot of people think about what are the secret ingredients for their successes. The last thing that I like to ask, well, 2 more. I'm going to give you 2 more because the one more just popped in my head. The fifth thing that I would ask someone is, give me a book that you have grown from. What is something that you've read or listened to? You have to say listen to in the day of YouTube and Audible and all the places that we can go and grab stuff, information audibly. What is something that you've read or listened to that is super valuable to you, that's made a difference? And make a list. Can you imagine asking all these people out throughout history what book meant the most to them and being able to go back and see the patterns of what major books have impacted people that have made a difference? Can you imagine? And finally, the last question that I would ask, and this is a great one and you need some time to discuss this, but if you had time with someone that you really feel like is elite, you should ask them this question. If you could go back and tell your younger, less successful, less influential self one thing, what would it be? And just sit and listen for the answer. Can you imagine rewinding the clocks back 40 years and asking some questions of people that you sit around every day? What would you do differently? How would you build your business differently? How would you live your personal life differently? What is something that you would change? What have you learned in your experience? Because for me, when I look at a successful person, and I heard this quote a few years ago and I really love it, it's very easy for me to compare my page 1 with someone else's page 100. For example, when I look at someone influential in society, someone that I look up to or respect, even somebody in our business that I look up to and respect, I often compare my today with their today. And that's not a very good comparison. What we need to do is go back to the beginning of each of our experiences and find out what is it that we would do differently from the beginning? How would we build from the beginning? What did you do in the beginning that made you where you are today? Don't be overwhelmed by what you see, the finished product. Go back and look and see how they started and see if you can replicate that. So if you had a few minutes with someone that was elite, I would ask them those questions. questions, I would just run right down the list. And I would say, what do you see in the future? What is your superpower? Tell me a secret ingredient for your personal and your professional success. What's a great book that I could read? And finally, if you could go back and teach your younger self something, what would it be? I promise you, if you take a few minutes to take 2 or 3 people, get them on the phone and ask them these questions, somebody that you really look up to, someone that might have had more experience and more success than you, and you ask them these questions, it'll make a difference in your life. This is Tad Fulford with Rise Up in Real Estate, and I hope today this video helps you rise up.